In the culinary world, the debate over steak doneness is almost as intense as the marbling in the beef itself. For decades, chefs and critics and celebrities have passionately defended their favorite level of doneness, drawing from their unique tapestry of personal experiences. Some critics can barely contain their disdain for well-done steaks, often comparing it to the highest of culinary offenses. The late Anthony Bourdain wrote in his memoirs that diners who ask for a well-done steak are answered with fillets that have been spit on. Yet, let's not be too quick to pass judgment. The preference for a well-done steak is not a culinary crime. In fact, many people genuinely savor the leather-like texture and flavor throughout a well-cooked steak. Ultimately, though, restaurants should embrace the diverse taste from rare aficionados to well-done devotees. So this brings us to how Black folks became associated with well-done steaks. And if you like stories like this, you can find more stories like OneMikeHistory.com. If you like to support the channel, you can do so on my Buy Me Coffee Patreon page in the description below. But without further ado, let's get started. Let's journey back to the dawn of human civilization, where cooking meats was as primal as the crackling fire that they roasted over. Early humans gathered around communal fires, focusing on making their food choices both edible and safe to eat. Cooking their food simply allowed for better digestion, with little room for luxuries such as flavor or texture. But as societies advanced, so did their culinary ambitions. Controlled by cooking methods like ovens and grills, this led to the realization that temperatures of doneness could bring out unique flavors and textures. So let's fast forward to the Renaissance, when the culinary arts blossomed across Europe. In the kitchens of France and England, chefs were honing their culinary craft and experimenting with flavors and textures. Although specific historical records do not pin down the exact moment the term doneness popped up into our lexicon, it's believed that variations of this term have been swirling around since at least 1150. By the 17th century, cookbooks began to provide detailed instructions on how to prepare meat, allowing diners to request their preferred level of doneness using terms like rare, medium, medium well, and well done. Prior to these terms, people simply would have used terms like underdone or undercooked. In the early days of the Americas, steak was a practical food source for settlers and pioneers. The abundance of cattle in the New World made it a favorite protein. Cooking methods were basic, often involving open flames and very rudimentary grills. The concept of steak doneness had yet to be formalized. Meat was typically cooked thoroughly to mitigate health risks. As America moved into the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution brought together significant advancements in food production and preparation. Improved cooking appliances and temperature control methods allowed for more precision in cooking meat. Steakhouses began to emerge in urban centers like Chicago and New York, catering to the growing middle to upper class who sought a fine dining experience. During this time, the concept of steak doneness, ranging from rare to medium, to take shape, influencing both culinary trends and customer preferences. In the post-World War II era, it marked another pivotal moment in the history of steak doneness in America. Urbanization and the rise of the backyard barbecue culture popularized grilling as a social activity. Americans began to experiment with different levels of steak doneness, leading to regional preferences. For instance, the Midwest developed a reputation for favoring their steaks medium to medium well, while the coastal areas leaned towards a rarer preparation. However, the preference for well-done steaks remained ingrained for many Americans. Well-done steaks were still considered the norm in many households, reflecting a mix of traditions and personal tastes. For a significant portion of the population, well-done steaks symbolized a sense of familiarity and comfort rooted in generational cooking practices. However, for Black Americans, this epic tale of steak doneness begins in the smoke-filled kitchens of southern plantations. Enslaved African Americans often found themselves relegated to the kitchen scraps and the grisly, seemingly unedible parts of the animals that were often discarded. Faced with tough, stewy cuts of meat, they rose to the challenge, wielding slow cooking as their magic wand. As smoky aromas filled the air, these forgotten pieces were transformed into tender, flavorful dishes, elevated by the infusion of herbs, spices, and a lot of love. The culinary practices among Black Americans have deep roots in African traditions, adapted and evolved throughout the harsh realities of enslavement. Enslaved Africans brought these traditions with them to the Americas and then infused them with Southern cuisine. Forced to make do with lesser cuts of meat, they turned to slow cooking methods such as barbecuing and braising. These techniques brilliantly turn necessity into culinary innovation by rendering tougher cuts of meat tender and delicious. Over time, this tradition of well-cooked meats, including steak, became a hallmark of Black kitchens. This preference likely evolved due to a mix of necessity and cultural adaptation. By cooking tougher cuts of meat for extended periods of time, the meat was transformed into something edible. Safety concerns also played a role during this time when foodborne illnesses were rampant and medical care was extremely limited. Thoroughly cooked meat, especially pork and poultry, was the only option. Safety measures further cemented the tradition of well-cooked meat in Black culinary practices. Following emancipation, the culinary story took a new turn. Waves of African Americans surged from the rural South into bustling metropolis in the North and the West during the Great Migration. This mass movement spurred significant culinary exchange and adaptation, access to a wider variety of foods, including better cuts of meat, providing opportunities for experimentation with different cooking methods and levels of doneness, leading to an evolution that established traditions while paying homage to their roots. Yet, well-cooked meat remained the norm. During the Jim Crow era, African Americans endured relentless systemic, economic, and social inequities that permeated every aspect of their life. Far beyond separate drinking fountains and separate schools, this was a time where economic exploitation wove itself into the daily fabric of Black existence and manifested even in seemingly the simple act of purchasing food. Imagine walking into a grocery store where the shelves were sparse, produce was bruised, and the meat was past expiration. There were tales of butchers fully aware of the limited options that were available to Black shoppers who shamelessly offloaded their nearly expired meat. Black families were then forced to cook that meat thoroughly to ensure that it was safe to eat. This was not just a matter of poor business practices, but a daily reminder of the systemic barriers deliberately designed to demean and exploit. These butchers and shop owners were just one cog in a larger machine of Jim Crow exploitation. Black communities during this time had extremely limited access to mainstream markets or resources. As a result, they often relied on local businesses within their own communities. Businesses themselves were entangled in a system intent on keeping Black people economically disadvantaged. The economic struggles of these small businesses made it difficult for them to then provide high-quality goods, further entrenching this cycle of exploitation. In this harsh reality, it is very plausible that butchers and other food suppliers took advantage of Black customers by selling them low-quality, nearly expired products. Such practices would fit seamlessly into the broader patterns of discrimination and economic exploitation that defined the era. While direct documentation of butchers specifically selling expired meats to Black customers is sparse, the collective memory, personal narratives, community accounts handed down through generations paint a compelling picture of these injustices. By the mid-20th century, an unstoppable wave swept through America, irrevocably changing the fabric of society. The civil rights movement not only fought for justice, but it also ignited a vibrant sense of pride and connection within the African American community. This new vigor infused every part of life, especially in the kitchen, where African American chefs and cooks began to receive recognition that they so long deserved. Their culinary talents illuminated the rich and diverse culinary culinary heritage that had long been overlooked. Amidst this culinary tapestry, one tradition unfurled like a banner, and this was a preference for well-done steaks. Today, across America, choices about how to cook steak reflect more than just personal preferences. And as we stated, they are intertwined with traditions and family histories. And while many cherish their steaks well done as a preference rooted in earlier generations and often linked to safety concerns and cooking methods passed down from families, in the broader landscape of the American steak preferences, we find that the variety of doneness levels tell their own stories. Statistics show that medium rare is the most popular doneness, with about 38% steak enthusiasts worldwide preferring this level of doneness. 32% of Americans prefer a medium steak. Other preferences like rare and medium well each garner around 12% of the population, while a well-done steak is chosen about 6% of the time. However, within the African American community, a unique pattern emerges around the medium well steaks at 37%, a preference that is a bit different from the overall trend. Then, close behind that is medium and well-done steaks, who are also popular in the African American community at 28 and 25% respectively. So it seems that African Americans still have a very high preference for a well-done steak. But before I leave you today, we're going to leave you with one last note. Renowned food writer and historian Jessica B. Harris captured the sentiment about Black people and their steak doneness perfectly. The African American table is one that is rooted in the legacy of survival, adaptation, and ultimately resilience. Thank you. This has been One Mic Black History. I'm your host, Country Boy. If you love stories like this, you can find more stories like this at onemichistory.com. I'd like to thank all my subscribers. Without you, none of this could be possible. And I love you. Peace.